It's time to do some serious damage control. Fasten your seatbelts, guys, because I've been wanting to make this video for 4 years now, and I'm not holding back any thoughts on this one. I've been wanting to make this video ever since I saw Psych2Go's video that came out in 2020, and my blood has been boiling ever since. And just as a disclaimer for my video, I'm not trying to badmouth the entire channel. Obviously, with over 12 million subscribers, Psych2Go is clearly making content that people are enjoying. My intention isn't even to reach Psych2Go, although if you watch this and you're interested in improvement and you can handle the criticism, by all means, welcome. I care much more about reaching and speaking specifically and directly to the people who have seen their video entitled 8 Things That Make a Highly Sensitive Person Hard to Love. Now, if you're already peeved by the title alone, just wait. There are some people who thankfully weren't willing to stand for some of the messaging in that video and sounded off angrily in the comment section. And throughout this video, I'm going to break down for you why. As a highly sensitive person myself and a certified coach, and someone who has spent years studying and learning about the highly sensitive trait, psychology, healthy relationship dynamics, the nervous system, chronic stress, childhood wounds, and more, their video infuriated me, and I really resent the fact that they made it at all, honestly. And fair warning, I'm going to try to keep my fury as composed and productive in this video as possible because there are extremely legitimate reasons why the video that Psych2Go made is very misguided, detrimental, and anger-provoking. And I want the clarifying points that I'm going to be sharing with you to be first and foremost what stands out in my video. Highly sensitive people are already a misunderstood, under-supported, underappreciated community. Many highly sensitive people grow to despise their trait before they even get the chance to fully understand it. Many highly sensitive people struggle in relationships and with their self-worth. And many HSPs are mistreated and taken advantage of in all kinds of relationships due to their higher levels of empathy. So it just gets my blood boiling that someone with as large of an audience as they have would even think about creating a piece of content that encourages highly sensitive people to believe that the problem in their love life is that they are somehow fundamentally difficult to love. In fact, that is an extremely damaging message to tell anyone. Psych2Go is a psychology education channel and should be educating from a non-biased perspective. Concluding whether or not someone is hard to love is entirely subjective. And for a major education platform with a focus on mental health to be planting these horribly self-loathing thoughts in the heads of highly sensitive people is downright irresponsible and detrimental. And if they had done enough research on the trait, they would know that HSPs are more affected by their surroundings and are more susceptible to any negative influences around them, which should have been reason enough to stop them in their tracks the moment they came up with the concept for their video. I know that my channel is pretty small at the moment, but I'm hoping that somehow my video reaches all of the people that watched their video, so I can help repair the damage that their video has likely caused so many HSPs who are just online looking for answers on how to live a good life and find love. I think the only reason they even got away with making this video, and it getting all the attention that it has gotten, is that so many HSPs out there already subscribe to the belief that they are somehow hard to love, because they've been put down, negatively conditioned, or even gaslit and manipulated to believing this about themselves. Believe me, I've interacted and worked with enough HSPs to know this. So with their video, their channel is essentially capitalizing off of a specific group of people's poor self-perceptions that they developed, likely as a result of experiencing relational trauma. And this is supposed to be a psychology education channel making people feel supported in their mental health. In my opinion, the video that I'm referring to is doing the exact opposite. And another thing, not very many people know about the highly sensitive trait, which is something that they acknowledged in the first 20 seconds of their video. So not only are there people watching their video that already know about the trait within themselves and already resent the fact that they have it and think negatively about themselves because of it, but there are also many people out there who are seeing this channel's videos as their first exposure and introduction to the highly sensitive trait. So imagine someone learning for the first time that they're an HSP through the lens of that video. Or someone who isn't an HSP who watches that video and learns about these highly sensitive people that are so-called frustrating to date, and therefore going forward keeps that in mind when they go out searching for love, and intentionally avoids anyone who says they're a highly sensitive person for these reasons, making it even harder for HSPs to find love and reinforcing these beliefs that they are somehow fundamentally difficult to love. I mean, come on! A channel all about psychology with this much public influence with a focus on mental health should know better about how psychologically damaging these sentiments are for the highly sensitive community. As of this moment, 1 million people have watched that video. 1 million people have sat there and been fed 8 reasons why a specific group of people are hard to love. How is that helping anyone? I'm beginning to question what the point of even making that video was. And if they just did it for views, that would be incredibly unethical. I also think, again, that part of the reason they even got away with making that video is because there are a lot of people that don't know what the trait is, since awareness around sensory processing sensitivity is still growing and reaching mainstream audiences, which I'd argue makes it even more important that the information out there about this trait be accurate and from reputable sources. But my point is, imagine how it would come across if they made a similar video on a more well-known neurodivergent or minority group. Imagine, for example, that they made a video entitled, "Why Autistic People Are Hard to Love." They would receive so much backlash for that. And it bothers me that their video is even still standing and that people are continuing to see it. After working with enough HSPs as a wellness and mindset coach, and spending time in support forums and online groups with HSPs who are struggling to live happy and healthy lives, much to no fault of their own because they're having to overcome society's obstacles that make thriving as an HSP even more difficult than for the average person. Believe me when I tell you, HSPs already have plenty of negative beliefs about themselves that they need to unpack in order to thrive without Psych2Go's video piling it on even thicker. So if you watch this video of mine and agree with these sentiments and feel like more HSPs need to see this, please share this video and like it. That will send a message directly to YouTube that you, the highly sensitive viewer, found this valuable, and therefore it will show it to more HSP viewers like you. Okay, so I'm sorry that was such a long intro, but all of those things needed to be prefaced before I get into the 8 points of their video. So without further ado, I'm going to clear this up for you. I'll even show you screenshots of their video and read the full quotes to you that I'm referencing from what they say in their video so that you don't even have to go over there and give their video another view that it honestly does not deserve. I know I'm already throwing a lot of shade, but hey, at least this way they can't come out and say something like, every HSP is a pushover or some other random stereotype. And by the way, this is going to be a full-on presentation because I mean business right now. So let's put a nice calming background in here to soothe all of our nervous systems while I discuss the following infuriating points with you. First of all, they begin the video by saying most HSPs don't even know they are HSPs, while others can't really comprehend what it means to be a highly sensitive person. They're often misunderstood and seen as too sensitive or too intense or too emotional by those around them. Cool. So right off the bat, they are acknowledging that not many people know about the trait and that the trait is misunderstood and are often seen or misinterpreted negatively by those around them. Great. So why are you, a huge channel that many look to for accurate psychology information, making a video reinforcing these negative misconceptions? And also, before we even get into the first point of their video, I'd like to bring your attention going forward that some of the language they use when describing the highly sensitive community includes phrases like to this, to that, always need this, never do that. These words imply too much absoluteness to behaviors and subjective judgment about what is or isn't to anything. They also say things like, as an HSP, you're obviously blank, you do this, you do that, which also is not well thought out language to be using. If your goal is to be neutral, informative, objective, politically correct, etc., and acknowledge people's uniqueness and individuality, this type of assumptive language and phrases that overgeneralize are dangerous territory to hang out in. Not all HSPs are the same, and not every HSP will always or never behave the same, or even feel or behave the exact same way from one day to the next. When you speak this way about a certain group, especially from an educational position, it reinforces harmful stereotypes and is asserting a viewpoint on what another person is or does without knowing them personally or accounting for individuality. And if you've ever worked with a couples therapist on healthy communication and conflict resolution, you often learn not to use these types of phrases because they unfairly oversimplify another person's behavior, when in reality, situations and things and people are more complex, layered, and nuanced. The reason I bring this up is to let you know that it's not helpful for you to have beliefs about yourself that you are too anything, or that you are always are overwhelmed, or you never have enough energy, etc. How you view yourself is important and has a big impact on your life and overall well-being, which is really the whole reason why I'm putting so much effort into making this video in the first place. And I also want to remind you to check in with yourself to decide if something resonates with you, especially when learning about and deciding how to perceive yourself, and to question and evaluate the accurateness of any given statement, even if the information you are getting is coming from an authority figure, educational institution, loved one, or otherwise seemingly reputable source. Number one supposed reason why HSPs are hard to love: picking up on every emotion. So just to reiterate, in the effort to make sure I'm doing an accurate job making this video, for each of these 8 points, I'm going to just straight up read you the direct quote from the video and put the main aspect of the quote that I'm focusing on addressing on the screen if the whole quote doesn't fit on the screen. So the first thing that they say in this point number 1 about picking up on every emotion: you are quick to absorb your partner's emotional states, whether good or bad. You empathize with them and experience their feelings as your own. It's hard for you to remain calm when your partner is anxious. First of all, this is not inherently a trait of an HSP. This is the result of not having the conscious awareness and discernment to be able to differentiate someone else's emotions from your own, not being grounded enough in your own energy and experience to keenly observe others' emotions without absorbing them or taking them on as your responsibility to fix. Absorbing others' emotions often comes from things like codependency and a lack of a strong sense of self and poor differentiation skills. It's emotional enmeshment. This is not strictly an HSP thing, nor is it just something you are doomed to do just because you have a high degree of empathy or are an HSP. The issue here is a lack of emotional differentiation, not a higher degree of empathy. You can have empathy for others without absorbing or taking responsibility for their emotions. A natural inclination towards higher empathy is the only part here that is actually inherent to the HSP trait. They also go on to say, sometimes they, as in your partner, are left with no other choice but to keep their distance from you, especially when they are angry or irritable, to keep their mood from rubbing off on you as well. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure why taking time on your own away from your partner when you're in a bad mood is a bad thing. If you as a partner are not able to regulate your own emotions and tend to your own emotional needs so that you can be a safe and respectful person to be around regardless of your mood, you shouldn't subject other people to your unregulated emotions. And the fact that HSPs are empathetic is not a reason to avoid them when you're feeling an emotion. In fact, if you're able to communicate and regulate your own emotions effectively, connecting with someone who is empathetic when you are feeling down or upset can actually bring you closer together. Because empathy in a relationship, which results in a person feeling seen and understood for what they are feeling, helps relationships grow stronger. The problem here is related to emotional regulation skills, not the fact that you are empathetic as an HSP. And I don't know, maybe instead of making an HSP feel bad for having empathy, a highly valuable skill to have in a relationship or trait to have in a partner, and pinning this relational issue on an entire trait that is an inherent aspect of someone's personality, we should instead be encouraging people to make sure they are asking themselves if the other person they're in a relationship with is even showing up in a mature and healthy and respectful way to begin with, or if that person is dumping their unprocessed emotions on them. And also asking ourselves if we as HSPs are relating to others' emotions in a healthy way, or are we absorbing their emotions and taking responsibility for them? Supposed reason number 2 why HSPs are hard to love: perceiving every little detail. HSPs are incredibly adept to reading faces and body language, and so you have a tendency to fixate on it no matter how many times you're told it didn't mean anything. Whether it's a slight change in a tone of voice or a shift in facial expressions, you pay attention to what those around you do, and it causes you to take things too seriously sometimes. As a result, your partner has to constantly be cautious of their behavior around you to prevent you from overthinking too much. Again, why are we so quick to blame the HSP for a relational issue that may not even be the HSP's quote-unquote fault? If a person interacting with an HSP is annoyed that the changes in their own tone of voice and facial expressions are being noticed and acknowledged or inquired about, then maybe that's an indication that that person could stand to be a little bit more self-aware. HSPs and people in general may project interpretations onto another person of what changes in their tone or expressions mean based on their own insecurities. But the innate, highly sensitiveness here is just the heightened ability to pick up on subtle social cues. This is not inherently bad. This can actually be incredibly beneficial during conversation and can lead to insights that can help an HSP be more attentive to a person's feelings or needs, and or be able to provide useful feedback for someone who may not be as aware of how they are communicating non-verbally. In a situation such as the one that Psych2Go is describing here, maybe the HSP is reading too much into someone's subtle nonverbal body language and not focusing enough on what a person is saying. Although, I'd argue that a person's actions and behaviors are more telling than their words anyway. But it's also possible that this person who the HSP is interacting with is sending mixed signals by saying one thing verbally and something else non-verbally. At the heart of any healthy relationship is effective communication. If you as a partner are doing things like rolling your eyes, making sarcastic comments, sighing heavily, or otherwise doing passive-aggressive things, you are not communicating your feelings directly or in a healthy way, and they would negatively affect your interactions with any partner, not just a highly sensitive person. While HSPs and anyone should make a habit to ask about how their partner feels and thinks about something and seek clarification during interactions if necessary, and trust where trust is warranted, rather than making deductions or assumptions based off their own observations. Partners of anyone, not just HSPs, need to be communicating their feelings indirectly and not in passive-aggressive ways, and it is a reasonable expectation to expect someone's words to match their nonverbal communication. As any partner, it is your job to decipher and communicate your own needs and feelings. While you are not obligated to share every little thought or feeling, if you have a frustration towards your partner and it's coming out in your facial expressions and body language and tone of voice, and not in a direct and clear verbal communication with your partner, you better believe that is negatively going to lower your chances of sustaining a healthy dynamic, no matter if your partner is highly sensitive or not. You and your partner, whoever you are, should be in a frequent habit of observing, reflecting on, and monitoring how you yourself are communicating with others. If an HSP partner is politely and respectfully inquiring for clarification or giving feedback on how a person is coming off to them during their interactions, it is on the other person to have enough emotional maturity, self-awareness, and respect for their partner to take that in and reflect on how they are showing up in their relationships. And I'll also say here that just because someone gives you feedback doesn't automatically mean it's true or that you necessarily have to take it to heart if it doesn't feel productive to you in some way. But if you care about that relationship and how you're being perceived by the person that you care about, especially if their feedback is that you are hurting their feelings by something you're doing, valuing someone's perspective and caring about how your actions are affecting someone else is a respectful thing to do. And at the very least, is worth hearing out for your own growth as an individual. We're all responsible for our own behaviors. This doesn't mean anyone is right or wrong, but it does mean that we should value our partner's feedback and concerns. Another point here that I want to bring up is that Psych2Go even said themselves in their video that HSPs are very adept at reading facial expressions and body language, meaning that they do a good job of this, which I would also say is true. So I'm willing to argue that in more cases than others, an HSP isn't picking up on something that isn't there. If there was nothing seemingly off about your facial expressions or body language, no mixed signals or incongruences, an HSP likely wouldn't have detected or noticed anything. This isn't to say that we as HSPs are correct in our read of someone 100% of the time, but our brains are biologically set up to detect subtle shifts in people and our environments. So I'd be more inclined to encourage an HSP to pay attention to when they feel something is off, rather than encourage them to ignore it, and I definitely would not shame them for it. Sometimes what HSPs are picking up on in their observations of others' subtle cues is an insecurity being projected, and other times it is a legitimate warning that something is off, coming straight from your built-in threat-detecting systems. Reading into people's facial expressions isn't always the cause of the problem. It can sometimes be the response to a problem. A lack of open communication. And this is really what I want the HSP viewers to pay attention to here, instead of jumping to blaming themselves and their trait. While reading into people's cues is something that HSPs often do that can cause people to feel like they are being observed, this tendency is also a very common response to being in past relationships where other people hid their true feelings and did not communicate well. This can very logically lead us as highly sensitive people to begin leaning into this skill set that we have in order to try to figure out what other people are feeling. It's important to mention here that in many cases, it's not the HSP reading into facial expressions that's the origin problem, but that the other person is not being transparent and communicating well, making us feel like we have to do extra work in the relationship to, at best, stay on the same page, or in the worst case scenario, simply keep ourselves safe. And it just started raining here, so if you hear it in the video, you've got some nice rain sounds in the background now. A partner, let's say, who is rude and has unchecked nasty undertones is going to feel like they are having to walk on eggshells with an HSP, because the HSP will likely notice and be bothered by each and every one of these off-putting undertones. But The HSP in this situation is also going to feel uneasy and like they are walking on eggshells around the kind of person who is expressing themselves passive-aggressively, concealing frustrations or hidden agendas, or not processing their own feelings and leaving these feelings to randomly burst out in interactions. A partner who has a healthy communication style, who communicates directly and doesn't use their tone of voice or body language to do the talking for them, whose actions match their words, who is reasonably consistent and predictable in their behaviors, who is in full control of the way they are treating others, isn't going to feel like they have to walk on eggshells around an HSP partner. The HSP is much less likely to read into subtle details because there will be a lot less of a subconscious feeling that there even is a need to do so. And as a general reminder here for my entire video, my aim here isn't to put all the blame on other people and dissolve HSPs of any accountability or even put blame on anyone at all. But because this video of mine is a direct response to another video that puts all of the problematic finger pointing onto the HSP, and not only that, but also uses these overgeneralizations as reasons why loving an HSP is difficult and undesirable, my aim here is to do some serious damage control by helping remind the HSP viewers that in a lot of these scenarios, their HSP trait is not the problem. Okay, so back to the slide. With a partner that has a healthy and clear communication style and has demonstrated with their actions over time that they are trustworthy, yes, an HSP reading into every little thing they do would be counterproductive and irritating. Again, both sides of the equation need to show up in a healthy way, but I'm willing to bet that if you had a partner with a healthy and clear and respectful and direct communication style, you wouldn't be reading into their facial expressions and body language in the first place, because there would be no need to. It is absurd, in my opinion, to pin this relational issue on the HSP's tendency to read into things without addressing the possibility that there might be a very valid reason why they felt the need to do so in the first place. You could say HSPs are too fixated on subtle social cues, or you could also say that HSPs just have a low tolerance for passive aggression, manipulation, inauthenticity, mixed signals, inconsistency, and deception. And I'm fairly certain that that's not a bad thing. The only scenario in which I could see this genuinely being a bad quality to have in a partner is if you're trying to throw them a surprise party. Okay, supposed reason number 3 why HSPs are hard to love: being able to catch lies. When it comes to dating you, sometimes it can be off-putting to know that they can't ever hide anything from you. You're able to see every chip, I think they mean chink, in others' armor. So people who have something to hide may feel uncomfortable sharing too much with you because they might feel exposed. Again, what? How is this a bad thing? In general, a partner shouldn't be snooping and not trusting of you. But if you're uneasy knowing your HSP partner can spot a lie, then maybe we should be skeptical of you. If you don't have a reason to lie, then there should be no issue here. Again, you don't have to share every little thing with your partner. But if you're lying or hiding something, or withholding information that would in fact affect your relationship or your partner's trust of you, or information that would impact your partner's ability to make a fully informed decision about whether or not you are right for them, that's incredibly dysfunctional, unfair to that person, deceitful, and untrustworthy. In order to have a healthy relationship with anyone, you as a partner need to be trusting and trustworthy. Pinning this issue on an HSP's inability to ignore shady behavior is just bonkers to me. How is being a good lie detector a reason to believe someone is hard to love? Or hold it against them as a reason not to date or fall in love with them? Again, all I can think of is a scenario in which you're trying to surprise them with a party or a proposal plan, but can't hide it from them because they will know something is up. And speaking of proposals, number 4 reason why HSPs are hard to love: taking things too slowly. Most HSPs like to take things slow with their partners, especially at the beginning. This can often make you seem hesitant or guarded when you first start dating. As a result, there might be times when they start to wonder if you even return their feelings at all. It's not so easy to love an HSP, especially for those who want something serious right away. And then they show a picture of someone proposing. I mean, just my own thought, but maybe don't jump into moving in together or proposals. I mean, you do you, when you know, but since when is not wanting something serious right away something we should be looking down on people for? There's a lot to unpack here, so let's just focus on one section at a time. Most HSPs like to take things slow. First of all, I don't even find this to be an accurate generalization at all. In fact, I have known plenty of HSPs who have the opposite tendency to dive into relationships and fall in love really fast, focus heavily on identifying the good in people and ignoring red flags. This type of overly faithful tendency can be a sign of an unhealthy approach to relationships. Perhaps an attachment wound. And this other tendency they mentioned here of being hesitant and guarded, that's a protection mechanism, one that can be adapted by anyone, HSP or not. Neither one of these tendencies are specific to highly sensitive people. The actual inherent HSP tendency here is that HSPs take time to process information and make careful and well thought out decisions. And in my opinion, that is a very good quality to have in a partner and in a relationship. Knowing that someone has carefully chosen you after a lot of thoughtful consideration and feels good about that decision means a lot. Much better than someone jumping into a relationship out of an attachment need or putting up a wall out of fear, which are both decisions made from self-protective agendas that have nothing to do with what you actually want the decision to enter a relationship to be based on, which is whether or not you're a good fit for them, if they themselves are desiring of and equipped to be in a relationship at that time and can show up for you as a healthy partner. The kind of realizations that only come out of thoughtful consideration, which takes time. Jumping into a relationship too quickly without thinking about if it's the right decision can hurt both people. Taking things more slowly and intentionally in dating is arguably something our culture could stand to do more of. The idea that HSPs take things too slowly is not a very well thought out reason to label HSPs as hard to love, or from my experience getting to know HSPs in real life, even an accurate generalization to begin with. I'm sorry if you feel like I'm screaming at you, but I'm trying to talk over the rain sounds above me right now. Okay, so then the next thing, start to wonder if you return their feelings at all. This isn't even about pace. This is about communication. Again, the problem on this entire slide goes away if you just communicate your feelings, needs, and preferences here. You can move at a slower and more intentional pace with someone in a relationship while having them know full well that you deeply care for them if you communicate that. As I've outlined, moving slowly and intentionally in a relationship can actually be a very positive indication that that person deeply values that relationship. I'd also like to point out that being thoughtful and intentional about your decisions isn't necessarily even synonymous with moving at a slow pace either. You can make well-considered decisions that are also timely. When you know what you want, who you are, what you need, and what your goals are, coming to decisions about whether something is right for you doesn't need to take very long at all, even if it still requires considerable thought. Okay, so we're about halfway through this list, and I just want to take a quick minute to remind you that if you're getting value out of this video, and it's helping you shift your views on yourself as a highly sensitive person, and help to heal any part of you that believes you are difficult to love, please like this video. This will send a message directly to the YouTube algorithm that you found this video worth watching and useful, which means that YouTube will push it out to other viewers like you, other HSPs who need to hear and see the points that I'm making in this video. Sharing it with other HSPs directly or sharing it in an online group or forum somewhere will also help it reach HSPs who need to hear this message. And commenting on this video if you have any thoughts you'd like to share will also boost it in the YouTube algorithm. I put a lot of effort and thought into writing and editing my videos, and packaging the content in the most digestible way possible, with the intention that it will really help HSPs out there in need of encouragement. So anything that you can do to help give this video momentum is greatly appreciated. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you feel like this content is really helpful to you. My entire channel is devoted to helping HSPs heal their mindsets about themselves, and to help them feel empowered, encouraged, and resourced to be able to create the lives that feel the most authentically supportive and fulfilling to them. Okay, number 5, supposed reason why HSPs are hard to love: getting overwhelmed too easily. Do you dislike lots of commotion, noise, or crowded places? Are you exhausted by too much activity or social interaction? If so, this means that you are not the type of person to go out and party a lot and find it almost strenuous as it gets too overwhelming for you. So for those looking for a partner who is adventurous and always outgoing, will likely feel frustrated when they date an HSP. So if we're talking about the supposed reasons why HSPs are hard to love, the whole idea that it's a bad thing that an HSP would not want to go out and party a lot just confuses me. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm inclined to believe that most people looking for a mature, serious, long-term relationship would see not wanting to go out and partying a lot as a good thing. Then, when their video goes on to say that someone looking for a partner who is adventurous and is always outgoing will likely feel frustrated when they date an HSP, they show a scene of what I assume is the HSP lying flat on the ground, not wanting to go on what looks like a nature hike, which is just really funny to me, because in my experience as an HSP, working with other HSPs, that's a wildly inaccurate depiction of what is typical for the HSP to do in this context. This is an activity out in nature, and if I was to bet on there being any wide sweeping stereotype out there that you could truly apply to every HSP across the board, it's that HSPs love nature. I've never met an HSP who didn't love spending time in nature. Just because an HSP doesn't typically like crowded spaces like large concerts and long, loud parties, environments with a lot of sensory stimulation that can be overwhelming to the nervous system, this does not mean that they aren't adventurous or don't like to socialize. First of all, there are introverted HSPs and there are extroverted HSPs. And there are also what is known as high sensation seeking HSPs and non-sensation seeking HSPs, all with different preferences of how much to socialize, in what setting, and with what level of stimulation. An extroverted, high sensation-seeking HSP, for example, is the kind of HSP who would most likely enjoy busier, more thrilling, more action-packed activities, whereas an introverted, non-sensation-seeking HSP would be more likely to prefer socializing in smaller groups and in less stimulating environments. With all of that said, I don't really get this non-adventurous thing. And you know what? I'll just use myself as an example here just to really drive this point home. I'm an introverted, non-sensation-seeking HSP that's visited over 30 US states, done 9 cross-country moves. I've lived in 6 different US states and 2 different countries, traveled through Europe when I was 19, where I definitely took a very questionable chairlift ride more than once, took a train ride through the Swiss Alps, did an 8-mile-long hike alone without a cell phone or a map in Greece on my second day being there. I went to a Florentine soccer game, which if any of you have been to a European soccer game, you know how crazy they are. I've also gone ziplining, went to a sword fighting class. I've done kayaking and whitewater rafting. I've gone camping. I've done horseback riding and archery. I've done various go-kart races. I've gone dune buggying. I've been to more car shows than I could possibly count. Been to multiple concerts with tens of thousands of people. Woken up at the crack of dawn to go down to the beach and watch the sunrise numerous times. Taken the wheel of speedboats multiple times when offered the chance to try it on the fly with very little instruction. I mean, I don't know, is that enough for you? And I'm an introverted, non-sensation-seeking HSP, the type that is considered to be the least social and most stimulation averse, or I guess in their terms, least adventurous, of all the HSP combination types. And I would in no way label myself as non-adventurous. All being highly sensitive means for me in this context is that I may need some extra downtime after these activities to recharge and process my experience, and or that I don't want to do these things every weekend. That's it. I love going on hikes and adventures. I genuinely enjoy socializing. Will you find me at a sports bar or a club on a Saturday night? Extremely unlikely. That's not my idea of a good time. My idea of a good time is socializing in an environment where I can actually hear the person I'm trying to talk to without having to scream or get beer spilled on me. Again, not sure how that's a bad thing. There are plenty of meaningful activities you can do with an HSP. In fact, I'd argue that the types of things HSPs would be more inclined to do are actually more conducive to connection. I would guess you'd be much more likely to strengthen your bond with someone over a great conversation at a corner coffee shop than while, let's say, mountain biking or attending a rock concert. Sure, mountain biking and lively concerts can be fun and exciting, but if we're talking about dating and the process of falling in love with and forming a deep bond with someone, the foundations of deep, lasting relationships are not built on the exciting occasional highs you experience with someone. They are built in the quieter, more mundane, everyday moments that are conducive to more genuine vulnerability anyway. So, I do not agree that HSPs are not adventurous, outgoing, interesting, or fun enough to enjoy dating. 70% of HSPs are introverted, and just like any introvert will likely tell you, the right setting and the right people make all the difference. And if you are with people who love and appreciate your authentic self, it's likely they will be respectful of you and your sensitivity and won't mind having the music volume slightly lower or whatever it is you need to do to be able to be more present, comfortable, and enjoy your time with them. Having a more sensitive nervous system does not make you hard to love. Number 6 supposed reason why HSPs are hard to love: needing too much space. Any highly sensitive person, whether introverts or extroverts, always needs some time alone to decompress at the end of every day. You can't handle being so stimulated for long periods of time, and thus need to be alone with your thoughts and feelings without any disruption. You need your partner to respect your boundaries and understand when you disappear at times without so much as a call or text for days on end, It's to clear your head and not to avoid them. However, people who don't truly understand why you do so can feel unwanted or uncared for. First of all, I really dislike this "you always need blank every day." I feel fairly confident saying that I'm sure not every single HSP on the planet always needs alone time every single day. These absolute assumptions and overgeneralizations are just not necessary, and if they are necessary for you to make the point that you're trying to make, it's not a very strong point, honestly. Secondly, I know plenty of non-HSPs that benefit from decompression time at the end of the day. That's not exclusive to HSPs. Thirdly, what the heck is this "when you disappear without so much as a call or text for days on end" thing? This description to me honestly sounds like ghosting, and sounds a lot more like avoidant dismissive attachment behavior to me than any common tendency of your average HSP. Since when does an HSP inherently lack communication skills and disappear or withdraw from their relationships without warning? There are plenty of HSPs I have personally known that are very involved in their relationships, very communicative, stay very connected to their partners, and even cling to or stay in relationships longer than they should. There are plenty of HSPs out there who are the kind of person who wants to communicate frequently, feel soothed by their partner's presence, and would rather decompress with their partners than by themselves. And some HSPs who would prefer to decompress alone, depending on the day or their personality or several other factors. But why is not communicating about these preferences being roped into our assumptions about what is actually inherent to the highly sensitive trait? Again, an HSP or any person with communication skills and a secure attachment style would not have this issue. I don't understand why this video keeps claiming that all of these things are specifically HSP things. If there's anything I want you to take away from this video, aside from eradicating any absurd belief that you are somehow hard to love, it's that most of the issues they are describing are unhealthy relationship dynamics, attachment wounds, and poor communication skills that are not specific to any type of person. Number 7 supposed reason why HSPs are hard to love: being too conflict averse. No one likes conflict, of course, but being an HSP, you're obviously against it. You dislike having to take sides and feeling the tension of unspoken anger between two people, so you avoid any possible conflict at all costs. You're quick to agree and go along with other people even if you don't really want to, and you're careful to never voice any criticism or differing opinions that you might have. You may not speak your mind. Instead, you bottle up all the anger, resentment, and hurt that you feel. You tend to overlook the positive change that conflict can bring sometimes, especially when it's dealt with constructively. And because of this, as an HSP, you can seem too compliant, submissive, and disingenuous. At this point, you've probably watched enough of this video to know what I'm going to say right now. Being an HSP, you're obviously against it. You avoid conflict at all costs. As I've said before, this absolute language is terrible. HSPs may feel overstimulated and overwhelmed by conflict since our brains are designed to pay close attention to social cues and the relational climate, and being around someone's frustrated or angry feelings and behaviors can be overwhelming. So, while there are some HSPs who shy away from conflict, there are also plenty of cases where this discomfort with tension can actually drive us highly sensitive people to try to immediately address and resolve conflict for the exact purpose of relieving the tension they feel so uncomfortable letting linger. There are plenty of HSPs out there, myself included, who are much more oriented towards addressing issues head-on. The tendency to entirely avoid conflict is, again, another maladaptive coping behavior, and if we're going to correlate it with anything, it's much more characteristic of an avoidant attachment style, or someone with a fawn trauma response, also known as a people pleaser. Just as well, I know plenty of HSPs who do the exact opposite of avoiding conflict and can lean more towards the other extreme, more characteristic of an anxious attachment tendency to not be able to feel comfortable and secure without addressing problems or concerns, and feel so unsettled by tension that they couldn't possibly ignore it. So much so that they feel a sense of anxiety and urgency to solve any issue right away and won't let it rest until it's resolved. Neither avoiding conflict nor needing to resolve conflict urgently is ideal, and again, neither of these tendencies are inherent to the HSP trait. The only thing that is inherent to the HSP trait is being wired to pay close attention to social emotional cues, which we've already discussed. The healthy and ideal way to approach conflict, of course, lies somewhere in the middle of these two extremes. Being able and willing to address issues promptly and directly with open communication, and also being able and willing to give the issue time and space to breathe if and when needed, and revisit the conflict at an appropriate time. And having the foundational relationship security and the open, clear, and respectful communication needed to allow for these things to happen. It is common for many of us, HSP or not, to avoid conflict and refrain from voicing our feelings or concerns and find conflict resolution incredibly challenging if we haven't had the tools or skills to navigate disagreements in a healthy way, especially if all we've experienced are volatile relationships or dysfunctional responses to conflict in the past. But again, this is not an HSP thing. These tendencies are much more likely to be correlated with or stem from having experienced relational trauma, relationship violence that coincides with conflict, or just simply not having been taught or shown a good example or frame of reference for what healthy conflict resolution actually entails. Not having any evidence from past examples of relationships that conflict can actually bring something positive will certainly cause someone to not even fathom that that's a possibility. Again, these things have nothing to do with whether or not you are highly sensitive and have everything to do with the examples that were set for you and the climate of the environments within which you learned about relationships. And finally, the final supposed reason why HSPs are hard to love: neglecting your own self-care. Being an HSP, you're very guilty of not taking good care of yourself. Your empathetic and compassionate nature compels you to put others' needs ahead of your own. You make everyone else's problems your problems, and you struggle with taking time out for your own self. If we're not aware, it can get tiresome for your partner to be constantly worried about your well-being. Again, neglecting your own needs and taking on other people's issues are things like maladaptive behaviors, coping mechanisms, trauma responses, and are not specific to the HSP trait. It is not your empathy that compels you to put others' needs ahead of your own. If your empathy compels you to do anything, it's to just simply care about other people's feelings. Relational trauma and wounds and people-pleasing tendencies that often come as a result of these things are what compels you to put other people's needs ahead of your own. This tendency can also come about as a result of codependency, or finding yourself in a relationship with someone who doesn't take good care of themselves or struggles with a mental illness or addiction, which can result in you feeling like you are constantly worrying about their well-being. Again, not specific to HSPs. Not taking good care of yourself isn't the mark of an HSP, it's the mark of someone struggling with low self-worth, grief, depression, or an addiction. The only thing relevant here that is actually inherent to being an HSP is being more likely to display higher levels of empathy for others. Everything else they are mentioning are things like stress and trauma responses and codependent relationship dynamics not specific to HSPs. It is very possible for an HSP to 100% see that someone else needs help and understand how to balance their own needs and the needs of others. This is not something that makes you unlovable. In fact, your empathy is part of what makes people appreciate how wonderful you are as a partner. If you are someone who relates to neglecting your own self-care, avoiding or feeling extremely anxious over conflict, tending to withdraw from your relationships, or any of the other things from the previous slides that I've outlined are not healthy or ideal. Number one, stop attributing these things to your trait and identifying with them and somehow thinking that your sensitivity is the problem. And two, consider seeing a therapist that can help you work through the maladaptive ways that you might be approaching your relationships. And realize that these patterns and tendencies can be healed and resolved in your experience, which will allow you to have wonderful relationships, all without having to change your innate high sensitivity at all. So their video ends with this quote: "You need more care and attention to really flourish and feel comfortable in a relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic." I don't agree that HSPs need more attention or care or reassurance. Again, that is more of a sign of an insecure attachment or a low self-worth, which I feel I need to reiterate again, are not specific to HSPs. We need our relational needs met just like everybody else. We need our partners to show up in a healthy and safe and reliable way and communicate clearly, just like everybody else. And then they finally close out the video by saying, "But once you do, it will undoubtedly be one of the most rewarding and heartfelt relationships your partner will ever experience." Honestly, if this statement was taken out of context of this video and was a standalone sentiment about HSPs, I would enjoy it. But on the tail end of everything they've just stated about HSPs, this just irks me. I don't know about you, but I'm not accepting the tiny bone they're throwing us here, even if I do agree with the sentiment. Putting this one statement at the very end of their video does not make up for all the inaccurate and poorly thought out shade that they just threw unnecessarily and harmfully at all highly sensitive people. Yes, HSPs, a group of people that make up 20% of the world's population, are lovable and can absolutely be incredibly thoughtful, empathetic, wonderful partners. What a concept. So remember, next time someone says you're hard to love or you're too sensitive, I highly encourage you to question the validity of that and question it fiercely. Instead of automatically internalizing a statement like that and taking it in as a truth and using it as self-condemnation fuel, ask yourself, what the heck would possess a person to say something like that? What kind of a person tells someone else that they are hard to love? Ask yourself why a person would actually go ahead with telling someone else that they are too sensitive. Ask yourself, in what ways does saying something like that to me benefit them? Because if they are saying something like this to try to avoid accountability for their own actions and behaviors, or to try to make you feel shame about who you are so that they have power over you, then believe me, you and your sensitivity are not the problem here. Honestly, what a mess of a clump of poor messaging. I hope I've cleared up for you that most of what their video is claiming are inherent aspects of the HSP trait are not in fact at all, and are much more accurately categorized as maladaptive coping mechanisms that anyone could have. In my experience as an HSP myself, who has studied the HSP trait and worked with real-life HSPs, the claims that they are making about HSPs in this video paint a very unfair picture of this entire group. A better title for their video could be something like, people with maladaptive coping mechanisms and insecure attachment styles are still lovable human beings and deserve compassion. Even though they honestly do nothing to suggest that these kinds of people need support, which is odd seeing as they're a channel all about mental health. Not to mention their slogan is, learn more about yourself. And that video that they made is posing a front of educating you, but in reality is feeding you a very specific perspective about an innate trait that you have through a negative lens. That's not education. That's bias, distortion, disguised as fact, and is psychologically harmful. If you are looking to learn more about the highly sensitive trait, I highly encourage you to seek out reputable sources and experts. Researchers publishing factual articles and citing scientific studies. Dr. Elaine Aron's books, the original psychologist who coined the term and has done a bunch of research. Or at the very least, people who are otherwise doing their due diligence to do thorough research and study the trait and deliver the most accurate, scientific, and helpful information possible. And please, at the very least, don't subscribe to any schools of thought that decide on your behalf whether or not you're good enough or whether or not you're even lovable. I mean, for heaven's sake. And another thing that really irks me, so much of what their video mentions about HSPs discourages them from leaning into their instincts and the natural ways that they maintain their safety and well-being. Things like paying close attention to shifts in behavior, body language, facial expressions, and avoiding environments that are overstimulating to their nervous system and taking time for themselves. What really bothers me about this is that the underlying message in that video is saying that in order to be lovable, you would need to abandon these instincts that you have that are in place for the purpose of keeping you safe in your relationships and honoring your nervous system's needs. HSPs don't need further encouragement to abandon themselves and try to change who they are. They need encouragement to trust their instincts and to have the discernment skills to be able to figure out who actually deserves their trust. In a secure and healthy relationship, not only would things like being able to detect lies, displaying a great deal of empathy, and paying attention to body language, etc., not be a problem at all, they would be good things. In unhealthy relationships, all of these tendencies that Psych2Go is saying are reasons we are hard to love, are the fail-safes that we have in place that are designed to keep us safe. They are our bodies and brains' way of trying to tell us that something is off. HSPs don't need to be encouraged to further discount their intuition. They need to be encouraged to listen to it, while also healing and becoming more secure partners. All their video does is point out how these behaviors can be an issue, and completely glosses over why these people might have these tendencies in the first place, wrongly pins them on the highly sensitive trait, and completely disregards how these inclinations or tendencies or behaviors can actually be incredibly useful. And to really make sure my message here isn't lost on anyone, I'll share that I'm not only speaking from psychoeducation and the collected data of experiences of other HSPs, but from my own experience as well. My empathy as a highly sensitive person may have gotten me into unhealthy relationship dynamics before, but reading into facial expressions, detecting lies, being highly analytical, being cautious, etc., have all been the reasons why I've been able to get out of unhealthy relationship dynamics. Being encouraged to ignore and dismiss these abilities and instincts are what kept me unaware of and stuck in unhealthy relationship dynamics. So from one HSP to another, please don't stop reading facial cues, detecting lies, and being cautious. Spend time on your own in safe relationships that are not romantic, like friendships that can serve as a healing balm for toxic family or romantic relationships from the past. These can give you a better baseline for how you should be treated. Heal your relational trauma so that you can show up as secure of a partner as possible. And also learn what healthy relationship dynamics look like, so you can have the discernment needed to recognize healthy partners. In order to find a relationship in which you can fully relax, let your defenses down, and no longer have to rely on these tendencies to keep yourself safe. Because when you are in a secure and healthy relationship and in a secure and healthy mindset, you won't need to be relying on or tending towards doing a lot of these things. So if you're a highly sensitive person that does relate to absorbing other people's emotions, fixating heavily on people's subtle nonverbal cues, being fearful or anxious of whether or not you can trust your partner's words, shying away from addressing conflict, etc. Yes, you wouldn't be doing these things as much if you were a more healed and secure partner, but also you won't be doing these things nearly as much in a relationship with someone who is a more healed and secure partner. Please remember that finding a safe and healthy partner is just as important as being a safe and healthy partner. There are so many other things I wish I could cover in this video, like all the reasons why you are easy to love as a highly sensitive person, the common reasons why you as an HSP may have struggled in the past to have healthy and long-lasting relationships, and the other mindset shifts you may need to know in order to love and value yourself and the trait, and to know that your trait is legitimate and purposeful. But this video is already so long and is the longest video I've ever uploaded to this channel. So let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do any follow-up videos on these topics or any other topics you'd like me to cover. One video that I've already created that would be a good follow-up to this video that you might be interested in is one that I made going over my theory about how I believe a lot of the negative things that most people assume are inherent to the HSP trait are actually stress responses and maladaptive coping mechanisms, like the ones we've already discussed in this video. So if you're interested in that video, I'll link it in the description below and you can bookmark it and watch it later. And if you're interested in taking your power back and taking a more active approach to healing your mindset and letting go of these crappy beliefs you may have accumulated about yourself and your trait that are affecting what you're able to experience and accomplish and create for yourself in your life, I invite you to check out and consider joining my online membership program for highly sensitive people. The program goes into depth, walking you through 5 crucial content areas, helping you move from a surviving state to a thriving one, and create an authentically supportive and fulfilling life as a highly sensitive person. You can learn more about this program and see what these content areas are in my website linked in the description below. And if you made it up until this point, I'm going to give you a coupon to get $50 off your first 3 months of the membership. Use code YouTube50 at checkout. I hope you've gotten a great deal of value out of this video. I'm trying hard to help highly sensitive people see that all of this negative crap that they've been conditioned to believe about themselves is completely inaccurate and holding them back in life. HSPs are extremely valuable as a group and have a lot of great innate skills. They are typically very compassionate and empathetic people, and we couldn't need people who are insightful, kind, innovative, who deeply care about other people, animals, and the planet more right now. I'm very passionate about helping HSPs break free of these psychological chains that they have on them, and helping them see how truly wonderful and lovable they are. And messages like the ones in that Psych2Go video are just piling on the self-loathing for these wonderful people, and I just hate it. So remember, you can always choose what you want to believe about yourself, and you are lovable as a highly sensitive person.